Welcome to America's Heroes Group, a roundtable community outreach with LULAC, League of United Latin American Citizens. Today is Saturday, August 26th, 2023. August is National Wellness Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And of course, we are back on YouTube and also Facebook if you want to see us. But of course, we can also see us in our archives on americashg.org and on YouTube, our YouTube channel. And we have our guest today. You've heard her before, Danitza D. James. She's a U.S. Iraq combat veteran and LULAC National Military and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee Chair and CEO of Repatriate, our Patriots. And we're going to talk about the Veteran Service Recognition Act, H.R. 4569, and what that means and what it's all about. How you doing today, Dee?
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Pretty good.
It's an honor to be here again.
It's an honor to have you on our show. So tell us about what's going on with this act. From what I understand, it's going to make things easier, should it be approved, to go and have people that have been deported to get back into the United States, but also to keep veterans or service members from being deported in the first place. Now tell us about this.
Yes, so the three things that this bill will do is it will direct the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense to facilitate opportunities for military recruits and veterans to apply for citizenship during their basic training, which is something that is going on right now. The Air Force did graduate the first class a couple of months ago, and I know that the Navy is following suit. But another important thing that it's going to do is that it's going to require the Department of Homeland Security to establish a system to identify non-citizens who have been deported and anyone who is at risk of deportation so they can consider their military service before deportation. That's a very important thing because right now they have not been able to give us any data on how many veterans have been deported, to where they have been deported to, and how long ago.
And this goes for veterans and service members and their family members as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So tell me, what would be the process? And also kind of walk us back a little bit through why a lot of people had the idea that when you serve the military that you would get citizenship, or that the military was by itself a path to citizenship. Was that correct or not correct? So we hear stories that people have gotten citizenship from being in the military, but now we're hearing about people being deported.
Yes, Sean, and it's misinformation. They're all about administrative hurdles, right, that go on within the military and within the recruiting station. I myself was one who was promised a citizen when I enlisted. They said, come join the Army, you will get college tuition, financial status, and then you will get your citizenship. I never obtained my citizenship, and I wasn't able to go to college until I left the military, and that was because of deployments. And also, many veterans, they never applied to naturalize because they were told that it was automatic when they joined. And some of the other ones, they applied for naturalization, but the government lost or failed to file their applications, and there is no specific program or process within the military to ensure that service members, when they join, that they complete their citizenship or naturalization process before they leave or in their first contract.
Now, do you believe that H.R. 4569, the Veteran Service Recognition Act, is enough? Does it do enough things to help veterans or help people stay in the country?
It will create an accountability system. That's what it will do. It will require DHS to take a look and see if they're veterans, to make sure that they take their service into accountability and provide other resources before deporting them. And within the military, it's going to attract those who are not citizens, and it's going to create a path so that they can complete and they're provided the resources to file for naturalization. Do you know that veterans have to file the same amount of forms that any other immigrant has to file to complete their naturalization? That is an immense amount of forms, of information, of data that honestly, as a 19 or 20-year-old who just joined, we had no clue how to even begin that process, let alone, hey, let me ask my sergeant to let me go to the legal office to apply for this. No, mission comes first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can imagine being in the military as a youngster, and then all of a sudden having all to deal with all the different trials and tribulations of basic training, and then AIT, and then going to your first duty station, and then all of a sudden getting deployed, and you're trying to then fill out a myriad of papers to go get naturalized.
Correct. Yes, and to the military, we're not a mission deterrent, right? With us not being U.S. citizens, it doesn't matter to them. The mission continues on. They continue to deploy us. We have a military ID card, and that is basically our passport everywhere we go. I know that it was for me when I was I had no idea where my green card was until I left the military and I found out that it was expired.
Oh, wow. And then do you have an idea about how many people are deported right now that are overseas or across the border who have served in the military?
Right now, within our database and those who have found out about us in other organizations by word of mouth, we have close to 400 veterans who are either in the process of waiting their legal status or they're currently deported to other countries. But those are just the numbers that we know. People that have heard through word of mouth, either social media or even programs like this one, right here. This is what we're doing. We're sharing information, letting anyone who's hearing this, if you have a family member or if you yourself served in the military and currently do not have legal status, we're fighting for you.
And oftentimes I've heard stories about people that have been deported and they're deported to a country where they don't even speak the language.
Yes.
Wow. And then
a lot of those veterans, they came to the United States when they were 2 years old, 4 years old, and they never even knew that country. All they know is the United States as being their home.
And then once they're over there, they don't have access to their military or VA benefits. They can't access the VA health care. They can't access student loans or anything that was promised to them in contract for their benefits.
Correct. And the VA, I will say, they have allowed a lot of access to some veterans to file the claim, right? To file for pension for some of the Vietnam veterans, and to receive at least some stipend while they're still deported, but they continue to receive no health care. We have had veterans who are 100% permanent and total disabled in Mexico, and they cannot access health care.
Wow. So what do they do?
So they have, due to several organizations' resources, they've been able to set up a bank account to where their VA disability payment goes to the bank account in the other country where they're living. And they have to use local medical health care, right, but paying out of pocket. So basically using their disability stipend to pay for their health care.
And then, so do you think it's hopeful that this bill will pass?
We're hoping, but we really, as you know, the military, we're only 1%. We don't pass laws on our own. We don't pass bills. We don't pass legislation. We need the entire community's help in making sure that this bill passes. And how do we do that? Actually, right now we're looking at Representative Mike Wolf from Illinois. He's in District 12. And he is one of our key players that we will like his support, and we really need his support to co-sponsor this bill so that it can continue to be a bipartisan bill. And we need the public's help in calling and making sure that representatives know that this is a problem, know that veterans are being deported after serving this country. They're being discarded as if they were just damaged goods. And in fact, yes, they are damaged, but they've earned the care to be here in the United States and to make sure that they have the resources that they need.
Do you feel that sometimes this discussion gets lost in all the controversy with the border right now? Because right now, one of the voting issues in the upcoming elections for the presidential election and even in local and congressional elections across the country, people are bringing up immigration. They're bringing up securing the border oftentimes. How do you feel this conversation gets that's enough attention in this whole mix of that argument about the border and immigration?
Yes, Sean, it gets lost because we look at this issue as being an immigration issue, and it's not. This is a military service issue. This is not a red or a blue issue. This is a red, white, and blue issue that we all need to take a look at. Service members, they fought for this country. They raised their right hand and swore to protect and defend this Constitution. And they did so without being U.S. citizens. The feeling that I had personally when I was in Iraq, it was I didn't ask anybody else for their citizenship. Hey, you're wearing the same uniform, you're wearing the same flag on my arm, on my shoulder that I am. I'm going to have your back, and I'm going to make sure that we both come back alive, right? For some reason, something changes, and we forget that we had each other's back when we were in combat. Why can't we continue to have each other's backs once we get home?
Do you think it's hard for people that are American citizens that have a legacy of being in the United States? Do you think they understand your struggle and what you're going through?
I think they understand it, but I don't think they know it. I don't think there's enough awareness on what's going on. I have asked fellow service members, right, and fellow leaders, captains, officers, enlisted, what do they think about veterans being deported? And they're like, wait, well, they're not being deported. Veterans, they get their citizenship when they come in. And I said, no, Captain, they don't. Right? So it's a lot of misinformation.
Wow.
That honestly, I think the public and fellow service members, the majority, they just don't know what's going on.
And do you think the recruiters that made these promises that you would get citizenship, you think they knew that they were not telling the truth, or think they were just unaware as well?
I honestly think that they weren't. It's not that they were not telling the truth. Is that, yes, you are able to file for citizenship, but it's no longer their problem once you chipped out. Once you chip out to your duty station, you no longer are part of their problem, right? Their job is to get you in, put in the number that they needed for that specific job, and they wash their hands. The problem is once they get to basic training and they get to their first duty station, somebody needs to pick up that responsibility, right, to make sure they continue and that they actually follow through on that promise that recruiter made to that service member whenever they enlisted.
And also, too, to bring that point again, is that you mentioned earlier, is that, you know, you're 18, 19, 20 years old oftentimes when you join the military. I joined that when I was 19. So you're not thinking about the process, that all the paperwork, you're probably running to this for the first time and having to fill out these types of forms and things about your life that's going to continue for the rest of your life. You know, benefits and educational benefits and student loans and GI Bill, and then all the things that have to go along with. Now you have to deal with trying to become a U.S. citizen. I mean, that's a lot of paperwork. And how long does it normally take once you start that paperwork? What's the timeline typically to become a U.S. citizen?
So within the military, they do expedite the process. So it could take anywhere between a year and 2 years. But that is a year that you have to constantly follow up, make sure that the forms are filled out correctly, and make sure that you have the time. Like, for example, in my case, right, I had no idea of any paperwork that needed to be filled out. I thought that my recruiter said, hey, yes, when you get there, they'll ask you to fill out this paperwork. So I was sitting there waiting for somebody to ask me what paperwork I'm going to have to fill out, right? In the meantime, English is my second language, and I wasn't that fluent when I got to my first duty station, which it was in Germany. So I no longer was away from home. I was in another country that I had just learned English, right? So now I'm trying to navigate being an E3 at a duty station where I'm not close to anyone at home that can tell me, hey, did you fill out this paperwork? Go to this office off base, right? They help with naturalization. We don't have any of that in Germany. You either have your legal office that is part of your base, and that is it.
And the odd thing is that what I've read is that the United States is probably the most difficult country in the world to actually immigrate into. You probably would have had an easier time getting into Germany, becoming a German citizen as a military veteran, than becoming a U.S. citizen.
Have. I spent 10 years in Germany throughout my entire enlistment. I think I probably would have become a German citizen before a United States citizen.
That's crazy. That's crazy, though. So
yeah.
So what do you think? To go back to that question again, do you think this bill does enough? Because when I think about the process and what it says, applying for citizenship during basic training, but then you mentioned all these follow-ups you got to do. And when you're in the military, particularly your first couple of years, you're busy. So, and you have a lot of stuff on your plate. And then if you get deployed or if you're overseas, it may not be that easy to go back and forth and submit documents and mail documents or email documents and things like that. And I'm assuming they want wet signatures on a lot of this paperwork. This means you got to mail.
Yeah, and Yes, and you have to process it and mail it. So the key in this bill is to make sure that not only that it gets passed, right, but that the people who are part of this process obtain the training, that commanders and leaders and units take the responsibility to recognize that they have non-citizen service members in their unit, right? And just so that they know, hey, this is what could happen if they do not obtain this. And by the way, it's going to reflect on your evaluation if they don't. Mm-hmm. That's where you get them. In my opinion, if you make this a commander's program, the commander will make sure, will go through hell and water to make sure this service member becomes a U.S. citizen. Why? Because it's in an evaluation. And if the evaluation, they all care about it, right? Because that's how you get promoted.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like, too, just even from a national security standpoint, it would seem, I always thought it was weird. And I joined the military and I was in AIT. I met some people for the first time that didn't speak English, and they were soldiers. They had already gone through basic training, and they were teaching me how to curse in different languages. So the thing about that was, I think, wow, these guys. I mean, we're trying to help them understand like what the drill sergeant's telling us and what our commanders are telling us and things like that, because they're getting it but not getting it all the way. But I'm like, wow, people come from other countries and other parts of the world that are serving in our military to go to war for us if we have to go to war, and to fight with us as soldiers. So you would think that they'd want to give them some incentive to stay on the right team. So I mean, why would you want to fight for somebody and then get kicked back to your old country? I mean, there's a lot of people that come from, even like there's Bet David, for example. He has a podcast, and he's millions of followers, subscribers. He's from Iran. He served in the U.S. military. I'm not sure if he's a U.S. citizen or if he's got a green card today. I'm assuming he's a U.S. citizen today, but this guy is multi-millionaire, if not billionaire, but he's multi-millionaire. And this guy has been on Joe Rogan, been all over the world. He's got a lot of followers on YouTube, very influential and very contributed a lot to U.S. society as a civilian, as a veteran. However, he's from Iran. Do you want him going back to Iran if he didn't get his citizenship?
I don't think so. And you know what? We have, like, there are several, for example, the cartels in Mexico. Mm-hmm. They recruit, or they try to recruit service members who have been deported to train and fight with their cartels, right? Wow. And we actually have a couple of our veterans who have been kidnapped and forced to do that, but they were able to escape. And they don't want anything to do with that country, right? They were never there. They don't know it. And their home, they believe, and they still want to protect and defend, is the United States. But you are sending a fully trained individual into another country we are fighting against, for example, in the war on drugs, right? So now you're just giving them free ammunition, free talent to go and train their cartel members.
Wow, and that's sad, because the temptation has to be really great. But I've heard stories about that. But all the veterans that I've seen, once again, did not want to do anything, have anything to do with the cartel. So they tried hell and high water to get away from those types of temptations. Not just the temptations, but the kidnappings, and the forced service into the cartels. Because they're looking for talent, looking for knowledge, and they have no problem. They can get across the border and terrorize and hurt your family easier than you can. Easier than you can go home and see your own kids. They have greater access to your kids than you do, and you fought for the country. You should be a citizen. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what they're risking. That's what they're threatened with, is to get to their families, right? To hurt their families if they don't work for them. So these veterans that we have had in our cases is that they've had to run away and hide and change locations, and we have helped one of them relocate to another state to take him out of that environment that he was in, where he was actually being sought out after. Wow. To train their cartel members. And the crazy thing here is that, 20% of all individuals who have received a Congressional Medal of Honor are non-citizens.
Wow. I didn't know
20%.
That. Wow.
20%. And so non-citizens have been serving since the American Revolution and on every major war. And 20% of all of our Congressional Medal of Honor recipients are non-citizens.
Wow.
I don't think anybody asked them for their citizenship when they placed that medal around their neck.
Mm-hmm. You know, think of anything else would be a way to try to vet if somebody is loyal to the country, it would be through military service. Because in military service, you're going to see everything. When you're in the microscope of the military, and your superior officers, your squad members, your platoon members, all those guys are going to see who you really, really are, you know, as the years go by. And if anything's going to test your loyalty to a country, to put your life on the line, and actually fight for the country. You got, like you said, combat veterans that are deported, special forces guys that are deported. You know.
Yes, we have Bronze Star Medal recipients that are deported.
That's crazy. Danitza,
Yeah, and it's just.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's all bureaucratic. It's all bureaucratic politics that they get in between America taking care of their veterans, and we need to just put that aside and fulfill our promise to make sure that they receive their naturalization as we promised when they enlisted in order to protect and defend this nation.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate your words and also the things you told us today. And then we got to have you back to continue this conversation.
Thank you, Sean.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time our roundtable with our partner, All Rise, newly crowned. Today is Saturday, August 26, 2023. August is National Wellness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout Honor Productions. And we have a panelist with us, the esteemed Charles Burns, a judge. He was elected as a Circuit Court judge in Cook County in 1998. Judge Burns currently hears felony cases at the Chicago Criminal Courts building and presides over the nationally recognized Cook County Rehabilitation Alternative Call and the Women's Rehabilitation Alternative Call, both called RAP. Treatment Court Hall of Fame member. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. So you're in the Treatment Court Hall of Fame. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, it's something that I'm very humbled that I got it. All Rise is a national organization for all treatment courts, both Veterans Court, Drug Court, DUI courts. They also have tribal courts. And every year they induct at least one person into their Hall of Fame. And I think I'm one of 20 that have been inducted. I got inducted this year, so I'm very humbled and honored by that award.
Wow. So you work to establish partnerships. One of the partnerships you established with the Cook County Housing Authority, and that's part of our topic today, getting housing vouchers for treatment court participants. Tell us why that's important.
Well, you know, you have to remember that people that are involved in the criminal justice system, and particularly people that have substance abuse disorders, usually don't have any type of stable housing. They may go from place to place. They may be homeless. They may be what we call couch surfing, and they don't have any permanent residency at all. Oftentimes, they are living in areas where it is replete with crime and obviously replete with temptations of people that will sell them drugs for whatever barter they have. And unfortunately for women and for men, sometimes it's sexual favors. So what we try to do is we try to get our individuals in the program, we try to get them first inpatient treatment, halfway house treatment with intensive outpatient. And then when they are ready, we try to transition them back to the community. But without that housing piece, we're not going to make any progress. So we've been working for several years getting housing partners, and I'm very proud of the partnership we have with the Housing Authority of Cook County.
So when they get the housing, is they taking them out of the environment particularly, or are they sometimes in the same neighborhoods?
What it is, it's usually taking them out of the environment. What we do is we get them housing vouchers. The Housing Authority Director, Cook County Housing Authority Director, so that's outside of the city of Chicago, basically the suburbs, partnered with our program, and we had 25 housing vouchers allocated for people in our program. They're transitional vouchers. I did not want them to be permanent vouchers. I wanted them to be transitional, and they're for a period of 3 years. And what these housing vouchers give the individuals is they will be able to go find stable housing in a good location, good property, and they're just paying 1/3 of their salary for housing. So obviously much more than they could afford before they were in the program, and frankly, while they're in the program, because we are working with them to get them back employed, employable. And oftentimes many of these people don't have any credit because their credit has been ignored for several years. So this was a great partnership we have. We have other partners for housing, but housing is one of the 4 pillars of recovery. And without housing, good housing, I think you're naive to think that somebody can stay stable.
Mm. Now, one thing that I've noticed from working with homeless people is that there's a trauma that often comes from being homeless. And that trauma is not just sometimes with the person who's homeless, but the family as well. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how that can keep a person trapped in an addiction or doing some type of bad behavior, a cycle of bad behavior?
Absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, we're finally beginning to realize now that a drug addiction does not just stand alone. Normally, there is other components to it. Most of the people, almost all, I would think, that have significant substance abuse disorders that are in my courtroom are trauma survivors, either direct trauma or vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. They've lived through a lot. And a lot of them are carrying that trauma with them, you know, not dissimilar to veterans coming home with the trauma from their service. And that's something that is definitely an issue. And we have trauma-informed treatment. Our treatment agencies, when they're beginning their first sense of treatment in the programs, have a trauma component. We also try to refer them out for mental health services. As a matter of fact, we just were approved just this year. We are going to be able to hire a full-time psychologist on staff to work with the individuals in our drug court program. And that's, we've been going to outside agencies, and that's worked okay. But I think when we have it in-house, I think we'll be able to afford the opportunity to talk to psychologists at 100% of the people in the program.
And then also, you've been providing safe space for children and other participants in the courthouse specifically in a pilot program that's with the Sesame Street Workshop through Sesame Street in Communities. Tell us about that, and then and I'm curious to hear more about what's going on with the safe space in an actual courthouse.
Okay. First off, if anybody's familiar with Sesame Street, they are very cutting edge, and they talk with children about a lot of different issues. There's characters whose parents are divorced. Their parents may be deceased. They may have same-sex parents. Their parents may be incarcerated. And they came up with a program to talk to children about individuals, their parents, their caretakers, and possibly their grandmothers or grandfathers that are suffering from substance abuse disorder. And the reason they're doing that is two different reasons. Number one, so the children can understand what mom and dad are going through. There are resources. You can go on the website. We have books for the children. We just received training through All Rise to implement these services, so the children know about that. And secondly, and maybe one level down, is as we know, a lot of times substance abuse can be multi-generational. Kids mimic what they see around them, for good and for bad. And if they mimic their significant parental individuals' substance abuse, it's much more likely that they are going to fall into that same trap. So Sesame Street in the Community has partnered with All Rise for this pilot program. All Rise has picked 3 courtrooms or court programs in the country to do this pilot program. We were lucky enough and honored enough to be one of the 3. So All Rise came out and trained us. We have Sesame Street resources. And a little known fact you may not know is there is actually a children's room over at the Layton Courthouse at 26 in California. And the children's room basically is for people. It's a locked facility. It's for parents to drop their children off so the children don't have to sit in court and see, number one, being bored in court because it takes a long time. But to see and hear a lot of things in court that, frankly, a young children doesn't have to have. So I've talked with my presiding judge, who's Judge Erica Ruddick, and I said, can we use this children's room space to set up a safe area for children of people in our program? And she was all for it, and we're in the beginning stage of working that out. And but we are talking with our participants, the people in my program, about these resources we have right now. So we are up and running with that. I also will note that we also are up and running with the Cook County Sheriff. They have drug programs over the jail. There's what they call the Thrive program, which is a women's justice program for women that are incarcerated in county jail. And there's a men's program called SMART. These acronyms, don't ask me what they stand for. I'm not really sure. But they are also using these resources too. So we're just going to try to spread this across the board from the time they come into the program until the time they graduate in the program. And I'm very excited about the opportunities we have here.
So I can see why you're a Treatment Court Hall of Fame, because you've been able to create these partnerships. So how did you go about getting these partnerships with Sesame Street and then also with the Cook County Housing Authority, and also the partnerships you've fostered through the years in order to get this message out and get the resources around treatment courts?
I can't take any credit for the Sesame Street partnership. That's all Rob's, and they chose my courtroom and a court, I should say my court program in Billings, Montana, and one in Detroit. With regard to the housing program with Cook County, my big thing is the more we publicize the programs we have here, the better it is for us. Number one, it's nice to hear something good coming out of 26 in California. You know, you hear the doom and the gloom and the violence and the heartbreak all the time.
Right, and people that don't know, 26 in California is a prison, the Cook County prison, and here in Chicago, people that don't know, they're around the country. Yeah,
it's a holding facility. It's a county jail where people are held prior to trial. But in the program here, what we try to do is we try to publicize what we're doing, and we have graduations every year. And we have a graduation in November. We have a graduation in May. And these are people that have successfully completed the program, and we have an actual ceremony in my courtroom. We do it through Zoom. As a matter of fact, if you want a link, I'll make sure I send it out for your listeners when we have our next graduation ceremony. And during the graduation ceremony, the people are able to speak, give their little testimony of things that went on. And in one of these graduations, Rich Minacchio, who was the executive director of Cook County Housing Authority, came. He was very impressed with the program. Within about 20 minutes, we decided to sit down and talk, and he was the one that gave us the vouchers. Had to kind of kick the chalk line a little bit with HUD in D.C., but we were able to do that. So, you know, my big thing is the more you promote these programs, the more doors that are open. And frankly, I don't mind picking up the phone and trying to make a contact with someone. It's a little bit harder for somebody to tell me no than one member of my staff. So we've been real lucky to partner with a lot of very impressive agencies.
And I think also to have a successful program makes a big difference, because like looking at 26 in California, which is the Cook County jail here in Chicago, that particular jail is also known as like the world's largest or the nation's largest mental health institution or something like that. They call it as a pun, because people are sent there and they have all these issues. They are not being treated. They're just being locked up, and it's just festering. Whereas you have a system that's obviously not working in just a regular traditional jail system, but then you have a program that actually is working, getting people out of addiction, getting people into being productive citizens, and doing it through a means which helps the community at the same time and is more cost effective. From all the data that research shows, correct me if I'm wrong, this is much, much cheaper than traditional jail, getting treatment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at dollar amounts, and if you talk about just the cost of incarceration versus the cost of treatment, it's a saving of more than $4 for every dollar you put in. But there's the cost that you don't see, the cost of reuniting a person with their family after 20, 30 years, the cost of somebody being a contributing member of society, the cost of somebody getting back to work. And it is absolutely amazing. You know, I've kind of got a trite phrase, and anybody who knows me will roll their eyes when I say this, but, you know, a lot of people call these programs restorative justice. Mm-hmm. I don't like that term. Okay. I don't. I think this is progressive justice. Because we're taking individuals, and we're taking them, we're not restoring them to where they were before. We're making them better. And they're making themselves better.
You said progressive justice, correct?
You know, they're working. Everybody is working or in some type of assistance. Everybody has access to get their credit cleaned up. Everybody has access to housing. And at the conclusion of the program, the charges are dismissed. And we go back 5 years. We vacate their convictions 5 years back. I got a great partnership with Cabrini Green Legal Aid, where they are doing that at no cost. You know, what the legal term is pro bono. And so if somebody comes through the program, they get through the program, they're clean, they're working, they're reunited with their family, and they don't have a conviction for the last 5 years because we wipe it out. I mean, this is what criminal justice is about. I mean, this is what we are moving forward towards. And I wish we had more money and more programs like this.
You kind of touched on this question before, the answer to this question, which is, You go with an evidence-based approach.
Right.
Explain to the audience what does that mean to you, evidence-based approaches, and then what are some of the tools and strategies that you found to be most effective at treating addiction and getting people from doing these petty crimes that end up in clogging up our prison systems?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe it's easier to do that. I mean, in some drug courts in the origin used to say, you come to my court, you can't use drugs, okay? And if you use drugs, you're going to jail. Well, you're dealing with addicts. I mean, these are people that if they could quit on their own, they would quit on their own. An evidence-based practice is having medicated assisted treatment to help them when they're struggling with their addiction. We all have heard of methadone. There's also Suboxone. There's Vivitrol. There's other drugs that will either prohibit them from getting high or would significantly cut the craving for drugs. So you can get over that period of time where not only physically they need it, psychologically they also need it. Medicated assisted treatment is evidence-based practice. Also, evidence-based practice is also you're treating the addiction, or you're treating the causes of the addiction and the what comes along with the addiction. So you're treating the mental health issue. You're treating the trauma issue. If you have a woman in your program that may have children, you're treating the issue of DCFS involvement with the child. You're doing a lot of those things. And evidence-based practice is also attacking the consequences of conviction, what we call the collateral consequences, expunging their record, sealing their record, getting them jobs. So I'm a firm believer. All Rise has taught me so much about being a judge. I'm a whole different drug court judge in 2023 than I was in 2010. And that's because I'm totally immersed in this. And frankly, my entire team is. And we just came back from the conference in June, the same conference where I got the award.
Wow. So treatment courts, veteran courts, addiction courts, all these systems which are based on the same premise, evidence-based approaches to trying to solve problems as opposed to just throwing people in jail and incarcerating people. Where do you see this going? How do you see this evolving? Do you see this becoming the model for the future?
I really do. I mean, if somebody would have told you, stopped 20 people on the street and said, somebody's been in the penitentiary 15 times, we're going to give them drug treatment, you probably have 16 of them look at you and say, that's a failure of character, or, they should just quit. Well, that's not the way it is. I mean, I think the narrative and I think the public dialogue is this is not only the norm, this is what's expected. If we can help people out, let's help them out, okay? Let's not punish them for things. They're not dangerous people. They're committing crimes because of their addiction. Let's give them the opportunity they can to succeed. And frankly, not everybody succeeds. We're taking we're not cherry picking cases. We're taking people that might have been to the penitentiary. I've literally had people in the penitentiary 20 times that the state's attorney reduced a non-probationable charge. I say put them in the program because I look at their record, I look at what they're doing, I look at their attitude now, and say, and these are some of our most amazing successes because we can do that. We are all familiar with the opioid crisis and the opioid crisis that's crossed, city borders, state borders, social economic borders, racial and gender borders. So it's recognized now, and we need to address this differently. I think we are addressing this differently. I think our attitudes toward people with significant mental health issues are also treated differently. I know our veterans are treated differently. We're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet, but I think we're on the right path.
And could you tell us, before we go, a success story that meant the most to you, to give people an idea, to solidify what the experience is like when someone is broken that then is all of a sudden made whole again?
I was just at an alumni association meeting this morning at Haymarket. Haymarket is our biggest provider. And what we did, we're getting people that have graduated from my program that want to continue to interact with other graduates. And they're also helping people out that are currently in the program. We had a good mix today at Haymarket. It was like 11 o'clock today. Thank you, Haymarket, for providing us the resources. The sheriff provides us the food. But just going around the room, and I could pick out 6 of them, and I know we don't have enough time, but these people are saying, I would be dead if it wasn't for this program.
Wow.
I'll pick out one particular person, an individual who said he was living in his car for years and years, now has his own construction company. He employs 20 people. He is clean, he is sober, he is giving back, he chairs meetings. And frankly, whenever I call him and ask for something, he picks up the call within 2 rings. But I could go on and on. You know, one other thing, one other quick story, and I'll make it quick. I can draw this one out, but I'll make it quick.
Go ahead. We got a couple minutes.
I had a middle-aged woman from Appalachia that struggled with the program for a while and was doing real good. And then one Monday morning, we found out that she died.
Oh, wow.
And I was heartbroken. We have people that relapse and die. But we found out that she didn't die. Her body just gave out. And I said to myself, we got to her too late. Because all those decades of drug usage, her body just gave out. She was clean. She was happy. She was sober. But my point is, we got to get these people earlier because we can help them. But we've got to get them earlier. We can't get them you can't get them at the last stage of their life, of their addiction.
What does treatment court need to expand further?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What resources does treatment court need to expand further to make it more a bigger program, further reaching, to get to those people faster and to affect their lives?
That's a great question. I mean, we need more resources. We need more money. I could definitely. One thing I'm really searching for is the tattoo removal service. Because a lot of these individuals have tattoos all over their face, and it kind of hurts them trying to get jobs and opportunities. We're also looking to get more housing. We're always looking to get more housing. We're pretty good getting the treatment. And I think I'm very optimistic that with the psychologists on board, we'll be able to address the mental health issues. But there's a lot of different things, and I've got a great staff, and we're always making phone calls and trying to open new doors and provide more resources for our program.
I think that's all amazing. You told us some really great stories, and also, once again, I really do want to see the treatment courts and veterans courts and addiction courts grow, because the system that we've been using in the past, this isn't effective. It's not nearly as effective. It's something like 3 to 1 as far as effectiveness. The treatment courts have over traditional imprisonment.
I mean, treatment courts work. I mean, that's the line of all rights. Treatment courts work, and they really, really do. I mean, the number of people you see in treatment courts that are recovering addicts is not the right way to say it. With people with substance abuse disorder, is simply amazing. And these people, they're involved in usually self-help group 12-step program, and part of that, their mission is to reach out to others. And I think by expanding these courts, expanding people in my court, giving more opportunities, but expanding the people that are fighting recovery and succeeding in the fight, I think it helps everybody, both one level and 3 or 4 levels up.
I appreciate your time today. You gave us a lot of information and added some color to this whole process, because oftentimes we hear about the success of treatment courts and veterans courts, but we don't really know what goes on, and we don't really see the real impact that it has in the community. So I appreciate your time for telling us about all these things that are going on.
Okay. We like I say, we do our graduations by Zoom. I'll send you a link if you want to watch. Send it to your audience. I'd love to share that.
By all means, definitely. Love to hear that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Judge Charles Burns, he's with the Cook County Criminal Court, and he is in the Treatment Court Hall of Fame. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And also see us on Facebook and on YouTube. You can hear us on WVON AM 1690, 4 to 6 every Saturday. Sorry.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service, and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes! Yes!
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world?
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time with our roundtable and our partner, the one and only partner, Veterans Legislative Voice, and our AHG correspondent, Stephanie Collada. Today is Saturday, August 26, 2023. August is National Wellness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And once again, we have Stephanie Collada with us. Of course, she's a U.S. Army Sergeant First Class veteran and founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice and our AHG correspondent. We're going to talk about government budgets and also the Freedom Caucus demands. How you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing today?
Not bad, not bad. It's heat in Chicago starting to abate a little bit, so it's getting a little bit cooler. I think we're down to 75 today, but it was like 115 with the heat index the last few days.
I'm still jealous. We're still in the 90s down here in Florida, so. But everybody, I hope that they're having a great summer. One of the things that, we're talking about is going to be the budgets. Right now, Congress is in recess. They don't meet back up until the beginning of September. So the budget is going to be like the big thing that's going on right now when they get back into the offices.
Wow. So what are some of the things that they're talking about with this budget? What are the Freedom Caucus demands?
Oh, one of the biggest things on the Freedom Caucus is what we've talked about, and it's a big thing with Glenda right now, too. So Senator Tuberville's hold on the promotions because of the military's change in policy to pay for travel expenses for abortions for people in the military. The prohibition was added to the bill. And a few other things like the prohibition of reimbursement or coverage for sex changes for those that are trans in the military. Those are one of the things that had been put into the bill, and got to remind everybody, the House has the majority of the GOP, but it's a thin margin. And that's the reason why caucuses like the Freedom Caucus try to flex their strength, because there's enough of those people to hold out and not pass if those guys don't agree with the majority of the GOP. So a lot of times, if they want to try to pass something without the Freedom Caucus, they would actually have to go to the opposite side of the aisle, which we know can actually lose your seat, like a few other GOP people out there that supported the investigation into Donald Trump. The Senate is currently a majority to the DNC, to the Democrats, but it's only by, two people, by the vice president and one more senator. So it's a very thin margin. A lot of things to pass requires a 60 vote to pass, and we're at 51-52 for the Democrats.
And to kind of remind audiences about what we've talked about in the past from previous shows with these two issues, mostly with veterans, or not veterans, but people that are service members, women trying to get abortions or go out of state or out of their post to get abortions to states that offer those. A lot of this is in cases of when the health of the person is in danger.
Yes, it's so the military will only provide an abortion or compensate for travel to an abortion if the pregnancy is from rape, incest, or for the wealth and health care of the mother, or the person bearing the child. And that's the only reason why they would pay for the travel expenses. DOD representatives have said multiple times in press conferences and press releases that they've told Senator Tuberville this is perfectly legal by the Hyde Amendment. But for some reason, Senator Tuberville keeps missing the exception part of the amendment. So if those that want to look up the Hyde Amendment, go to the exceptions, because he stops at the semicolon and not the period. So you could read it for yourself on who's saying what's legal and what's not.
So I think it'll be really, really sad if a woman needed to get an abortion for a health reason and died as a result of something that could have been prevented.
The complication in that is that there's also the FERS doctrine, which means you can't sue the military for basically malpractice, medical malpractice. So when these things happen, the family can't even find any advantage or have any benefit towards it other than the regular death benefits. So there's a lot at stake when these types of situations happen. You might be thinking money. Maybe that's the reason why. Well, prior to Roe v. Wade being rescinded, was that the previous year the military only performed 14 abortions.
All right, I'm about to say, it's not like there's the women are a minority in the military, first of all, and then second of all, it's not, you don't see a lot of pregnancies in the military. You just don't.
No,
and if they
the
do, it's typically usually going to keep the child because usually it's because you want to start a family, or maybe you have a spouse that's in the military with you.
Yep, or you just want to be an independent woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what? More power to them for doing that. I mean, I made the decision not to have children when I had my military career, because with military careers, if you become pregnant, you could fall behind very quickly because you're restricted from doing a lot of things when you are pregnant. So, I mean, focus on careers like that. Women are less likely to be promoted because of things like that for health reasons. So, I mean, that's what happens when you are a female and you have a vagina. And for the women out there in the military, 40% of the women in the military currently are stationed, duty assigned stationed, in a location that practically has no allowances for abortions. So those are the ones that are the 6-week ban, and you only find out you're pregnant at 6 weeks. So much less, some people you actually have to wait until after 6 weeks to find out that you're actually pregnant, and those type of things. And even the dating can be incorrect. This one I know for sure, because this has happened personally and for a few other people I know. The actual dating, the child or the fetus in a woman actually is not completely accurate. It can be very inaccurate.
Now, in the cases of trans surgeries or surgeries to help someone change their gender or gender reassignment, however you want to classify it, call it, is that considered a health question, or is that considered like plastic surgery? Well, how do they classify that type of procedure, medical procedure?
That one I'm not quite sure of, and I'll be honest. But I will say I know on the civilian side, they often classify that as plastic surgery. And for those that don't know, in the military, you're actually allowed one elective surgery in your career. A lot of people use it for LASIK. Some women do it for breast reductions or enhancements, because you're actually allowed to get the enhancements because you got one in your time frame. And because there's plastic surgeons, a ton of them at Walter Reed, and they need to keep up the practice, because you know what? Plastic surgery is not very often in the military, and it's usually because of battle, injuries or freak accidents. And so they came up with this program many years ago that people can do elective surgeries for that. And to me, that's what it goes under. I was still serving in the Army Reserve and working for the Army Reserve as a DoD civilian during the time frame that the transsexual ban was lifted under Obama. And this had became a big thing because a lot of people of the conservative side was very angry at this because they were worried about the money wasted on performing these surgeries. I haven't found any statistics yet of how much money it actually cost them, but I can't imagine it's that much, because it's not that many people. But many of the people that I knew that were serving and trans had already left the military, transitioned, and then when the ban lifted, they came back in. And that's the same for those that were LGBTQ. Once the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was rescinded, LGBTQ people came back in the military, prior service people. And we actually had a bit of a retention and recruitment bump when those things happen. And they, so when we're having a recruiting issue and a retention issue, maybe we need to go back to what we did before to get those bumps back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that are on the conservative side, are just morally opposed to the idea of someone changing their gender. They think that's just something that's completely immoral and should never ever happen. And then a lot of people just really don't care. They don't care less what somebody else is doing with their own personal bodies.
Right.
But that brings that controversy. But like to your point, we don't know if that's something that's going to be really that common. And then, but that's why I go back to that question: how do they classify it? Is it something that is tied? Do they relate it under gender dysphoria, and is something that needs to be done for the psychological and well-being of the person, or are they just treating it as cosmetic surgery? You're just doing something that's cosmetic. It's not necessary per se.
It's probably all of the above, is what my guess would be, because I know I have seen the gender dysphoria on medical records before for those soldiers. So, I mean, I've seen that portion. I know at least for the surgeries, those that perform those surgeries are plastic surgeons. So it's probably in all of the above. Just to remind people, I mean, the military spend more money on Viagra for our soldiers than probably the second
well, I guess I don't know. I don't know why you need Viagra when you're 19 years old, buddy.
Just saying, just putting it out there.
I'm not doubting it. But the thing is also, the thing we talked about on our show years ago when we first started talking about this topic is in the field, when you're deployed, things like that, what is it like for people that might need certain treatments or hormones if they don't get those things and they're in a mission or they're deployed or they're overseas or, God forbid, they're captured?
Yeah.
You know, what are
because you have to take.
What are the challenges that go on with that?
You know what? That's a good question, and it really depends because on the service, on the type of job you have, what's the current policies of the time frame. I know at the height of the post 9/11 wars, they were making a ton of exceptions, mostly so that they could keep the people in that we've already trained and already have the experience. Those I know that had developed diabetes, they were allowed to stay in as long as they weren't on insulin. But if they were on insulin, they could only stay stateside, which I have seen exceptions for, especially if they were, drill sergeants or instructors, those jobs that you're not going to really deploy to a combat zone. I'm not sure what the policies are now. There's exceptions for everything, and so that can happen. I do know people that were on specific medications that needed the regular, dosage and the time frames in combat zones, and it was completely, legal and okay. So, and I know for trans people, there's certain hormones they have to take like regularly throughout the day. Wow. So I completely, I mean, it's really up to the policies of the individual branches. It's all a little bit different, and it depends on the up-tempo of the missions.
Yeah, my biggest hope is that they take into consideration everybody's safety, the people that are trans, the people who are serving with those people in the mission as a whole, and not endanger anybody. They have sensible policies that treat people fairly, but also help people live, stay alive, regardless of who you are or what you're doing or whatever. Let's keep all our soldiers and all our service members alive on the battlefield and coming home in one piece. So if we can do that, then I think that's the mission accomplished.
Yeah. So here, let's go over a few more things that they have. So, I mean, the House had made this bill, it passed the House, and it was sent to the Senate. The Senate had created their own bill, but then after a while, they actually took the House bill and added their amendments, and that passed. So what we're looking to expect once they come out of recess is that the House will probably have their original bill back to them with the amendments from the Senate. The House will have to approve or disapprove or amend those. If they amend those again, it has to go back to the Senate. So it's this ping-pong game between the chambers when these things happen. So expect that. There's going to probably be a lot of talk on the things that the Senate has changed. A few things that I had actually liked in the House bill that had been removed because of the Senate were things, I'm trying to remember. Oh, the requirement, basically dental for reserve personnel was removed after the Senate's amendments. And this would actually help out with the dental health care that they have from their Tri-Care Reserve Select program. And that was removed, sadly, which is actually pretty hard because a lot of people in the Reserve and Guard, there's actually a high amount of unemployment with those there because more than likely they're probably students or they had just came and they were transitioned out of active duty, and that would have, cause effect for them to not have trouble finding a job and also health. So dental for those reserve personnel is actually pretty important, but that was removed. So thanks, GOP. Hopefully you can add it back. Let's do that.
And that's something a lot of people in the veteran community fought for that, for dental care, because that's something that has a lot of profound impacts on people's health and their lives, and not just from a cosmetic standpoint, but just your physical health. There's so many things are connected to your teeth and your dental health that is not being addressed. eyes and,
Yep.
and mouths for some reason don't matter, I guess, in the American healthcare. I don't
No.
get it.
No, the frustrating part is that the military, the Army Reserve, at least I know for that side, will pay for the fixing of teeth when it gets to a bad point, but they have limitations. So, like, they will do a root canal, but they won't pay for the caps because they see that as elective, services. You're capping an open wound. Like,
Right.
seriously, you don't.
It's like saying the band. It's like, well, we'll stitch it up, but we're not going to put any skin grafts on that patch of skin that's missing on your back.
And they're not going in, so they currently also do not cover for preventative or routine cleaning, which we know is much cheaper than having to do all of the mess after it got bad.
Right.
So, I mean, those are the things that's happened. A few things that the Senate did add that was actually pretty good. It's the treatment of certain materials contaminated with PFAS, PFOS, an increase in funding for the study and assessment of health implications of the exposure to that. And for those that aren't aware, that is chemicals out of the firefighting foam. They're most likely to be in the ground or around saturated airports and things like that, especially places that do a lot of practice with firefighting foam. And a lot of military bases have that saturated in their water. So they're trying to do more studies on that because they've actually found some links in health. So we might see an extension of the PACT Act down the road when these studies and reports are back to Congress. That's what we're hoping. Fingers crossed. That's the goal. And then another one would be the annual report of allegations of sexual misconduct in the JROTC programs. There's a high amount of sexual misconduct in JROTC programs compared to regular teachers in our high schools and middle schools. They're actually in a few middle schools. And so this will give them a better report, hopefully, to Congress so they can see what changes can happen. They also include an annual class from the Memorandum of Understanding with the schools about sexual assault and sexual harassment. This might be a little bit complicated because a lot of schools out there are not allowed to teach sex education. So how can you teach sexual assault and sexual harassment when you don't teach sex education? So we'll see how that one goes. Because, like, for myself, that was raised in the South, I did not get sex education.
And that's
in my
so not even at a certain, not even like in high school or middle school or nothing like that?
Nope. My mother elected me not to and handed me a cartoon VHS to show me what the heck happened, and I still didn't learn that much. I learned because, you know what, I'm a millennial and I learned from the internet. So
hopefully it wasn't hopefully the right websites, not the ones that
yeah, I know, right?
might get you into more trouble.
I was good. I knew what websites not to go to.
But the interesting thing about this, we talked about all these things in our show. We've had detailed discussions with experts on these topics, and it's good to at least see that the government is taking this stuff seriously. Once again, the only thing we're batting 1,000 until we got to the dental health, and that's really sad to see that was taken out because it actually saves money, saves the military, and saves our taxpayers money to do the common sense things, which are preventative health, rather than we could spend a few dollars on some cleanings and things like that versus thousands and thousands of dollars on a root canal or getting teeth repaired and things along those lines.
Yep, I know. I mean, they're listening, guys. So I mean, that's the reason why the sexual misconduct in the JROTC program is becoming around, and also with the help of the New York Times and other newspapers. But keep talking to your elected officials, talk to news media companies, let them know what's going on because they can pick it up, and then that's when the elected officials can find out because that's how they found out about a lot of things, and just keep fighting because you know what, these changes are made or because people talk about it and they let people know. So bring that stuff up.
Stephanie Collada, great to have you again.
Thank you so much.
America's Heroes Group, we'll be right back. Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time with our roundtable and our partner, Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer-Ruth Green, Battle-Proven Leadership. Today is Saturday, August 26, 2023. August is National Wellness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Clem, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scotch Honor Productions. And of course, once again, we have Jennifer-Ruth Green, Lieutenant Colonel in the Indiana Air Force, Indiana Air National Guard, a graduate of the U.S. United States Air Force Academy, combat veteran of Iraqi Freedom, and founder, CEO of Battle-Proven Leadership, and one of less than 150 professional African-American female pilots in the United States today. How you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here again. I appreciate what you guys do for vets. So impactful. Got the chance to hear the last show, and just really grateful for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
I'm always grateful to have you on this show and your career and esteemed presence that we have with us today. That is wonderful. All the great stuff you've done in your military career. And so you're going to talk to us about leadership and also the cultural and strategic leadership overview, as we called it. Tell us what is important, kind of following up on the things we talked about last time about establishing great communication, making sure you have people understand exactly what you mean when you're talking to them.
Well, first of all, let me talk about why I love leadership, because it helps us to hone in on being better. Not necessarily being better than somebody else as far as comparatively the person sitting next to us, but it allows us as a community to be better. And so when I think about the things that we're doing here in America's Heroes Group and the things that you are doing and show producers, Glenda Smith specifically, you guys are paving the way so that people accurately understand how they can have better, do better, and be better. And so when you provide resources and say, take advantage of this, when you provide discussions so that people can think about multiple sides of an issue. I mean, I'm just so grateful for the fact that you would have people on here. And so when we talk about leadership, this is something that anybody can do and be a game changer, like Cliff Kelley says, everywhere you go, regardless of what your task is at hand. You can be a leader regardless of what your position is. And so I think it's incredibly important, when we talk about communication, I think it's important to communicate the fact that there are ways to be better. And these are some specific ways, but just by listening in, tuning into what America's Heroes Group is doing, you are already striving to be better and are gaining tools all over the place.
So what are the do's and don'ts of good communication?
I think it's incredibly important as a communicator to make sure that you say what you mean and mean what you say. And you have to make sure that there's not a say-do gap. So a say-do gap is a difference between obviously what you say and what you do, and that can be hypocrisy in your activities, or like, for example, if you say that I care about you, but you don't show that you care about somebody because you're not going to be concerned about when somebody in their family passes away or giving them a pay raise or something like that. At the end of the day, there's a point where what you say and what you do have to match. But then secondly, I would say as far as communication goes, when we're thinking about the most important things, you have to make sure that you communicate. And if you think somebody heard what you said, say it again. And you have to make sure that your intent is known and not just your words. And if you can find different ways to say things, it's going to be incredibly important for you to do that as well. But there are several ways to talk about how your words match your actions, but overall communication is so incredibly important. And if we can start with that, I think that's going to be important for people to know.
Wow. There's a quote that you had written down, and I thought it was pretty interesting. You wrote, "Excuse me, it's my family calling, and every time they call, I try to answer." As a response to someone in a meeting and things like that. I think that's very, very powerful. Oftentimes, we don't get that. Some people don't have that ability to, take a family call. May not even be allowed to have their phone with them in certain cases if you're on a flight deck of an aircraft carrier or something along those lines. But the thing of it is that that's such for a leader or a person who is being modeled after, people looking to that person as an example. I think that's a very, very powerful statement.
Yes, I found it to be incredibly helpful. I was sitting in a meeting one time with somebody, and we were in the middle of it, and his phone rang, and it wasn't necessarily his phone that was loud, but it was on his watch that it alerted him. And he said, "Excuse me, it's my family calling, and every time they call, I try to answer." And it got me thinking as he was walking away, it was, wow, he really values his family. It doesn't matter who he's with or what he's talking about. Not that I was incredibly important. It was just, we were just colleagues.
That was pretty important.
But yes, that call was pretty important for him. And so at the end of the day, what it said to me was, when my family calls, he would understand me taking the same call. And so he conveys the fact that family is important as a colleague. And I'm sure to people that worked alongside him as well, he would talk about how family is important. But there he had the actual say-do match, so he didn't have a say-do gap. And the say-do match was very clear. And so when I say I value your family and I value my family, then I have to find ways to make sure those matches are there. And that was one clear way for us.
I think that's powerful. I didn't even see it from that perspective, because it gives you a kind of a safe space in a way, because now you feel if a person is valuing the same things you value, which you talked about previously, if it shows that your values are now aligned, because if they care about their family and they're willing to put their family first, it gives you the comfort, the feel that you can do the same thing. Now, that leads us into this. But that leads us into this, though. So what you mentioned also, that what you do in moderation as a leader, people who follow you will do in excess.
Yes. And if you've ever seen, this principle is so played out in everyday circumstances. If you've ever seen a 3-year-old and they do something and you tolerate it and you say, if you say a bad word, they say a bad word, and then they'll say it at inopportune times, or they'll say it 50 times a day, and you say, oh, that's not okay anymore. It was funny the first time, but they copy what you do, and then they're going to take it and do it in excess. And those are the things that provide a clear example from an everyday circumstance where you can see how young children will model after their parents, and you can see how they do things in excess. But when it comes to things in the office, people will tolerate what you tolerate. And if you walk in at 8:35 and you think it's okay, but the workday starts at 8:30, well, then people are going to start walking in at 8:59 or 9:15. But the concept of late is late, as far as 5 minutes late was okay, but 30 minutes is not okay. The concept of late is something that they're going to be okay with, comfortable with, and exercise. And one of the things that a senior leader that I heard, several years ago say that was really impactful to me was, the thing you walk by is the standard you now accept. And so in communicating about things that are wrong and connecting with people, that this is something we have to change, you have to make sure that you are not the problem and you are not conducting yourself in that manner, and that the behavior that you're asking them to change is not something that you're doing as well. And so whatever you do in moderation, people who follow you will do in excess. That's a very clear point. And I think it's important for us as leaders to know, because we have to exercise that judiciousness about our business, about our conduct, because people are watching us and they're going to do what we do, and what we tolerate, they're going to do in excess.
So having said that, what's easier? Is it being a leader in the military world as an officer or an NCO, or is it easier to be a leader in business? Because what you described,
interesting question.
Because what you described feels like almost like a leader has to be perfect, and in the military you have a surrounding, you have a structure that's there that kind of demands you to be a certain way, demands you to think like a soldier or a sailor or an airman, demands you that you follow certain criteria, and everything is structured for you to succeed in that area. Whereas in business, you kind of have to create that yourself.
I think that's a really good point. I think that in the military, you do have a structure that requires you to be a certain way, because as you continue to progress, people are looking for progresses in your character, in your modeling of behavior, in your mentorship. Mentoring and modeling is incredibly important. And so you have a structure, but you also have more of a glass bowl. And so the pressure is there because you have these expectations. And so if you don't promote, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. And if you can conduct yourself in a way, then you're going to continue to get paid. But less so in the military, and more so in the private arena, you have maybe a sense of nepotism. The founder of a company is going to put their young person, their child, their son or daughter as in charge of the company because it's the family name, but they may not have the acumen, they might not have the traits, they might not have the heart set and the mindset to be in that role. And so the pressure is less, but also the environment where people care is not as it's not as encompassing. So you don't have people pushing you to be better. You have people pleasing you and saying whatever it is that you want to hear. And so you don't necessarily get as much development. However, in both circumstances, you're observed just as much. And leadership matters just as much. So some might say, hey, there's a clear pressure because it doesn't matter if your mom or dad is the founder of a company in the military. You have to do a good job because people's lives rely on it. And there's a lot of pressure there. Some people say the pressure of the civilian world, you have to, you are responsible for people's lives and their families and their money. And so if you don't do good business, then 70,000 people get laid off. But in the military, if you don't do good business, you get laid off and they just put somebody else in your place. So there are different pressures, I think, with leadership. You don't have the cocoon where somebody's going to say, hey, it doesn't matter how you lead, do whatever you want. People are dropping like flies. They're just like, we'll just pay more money and hire more people. Or on the military side, you have now the pressure because people are saying, hey, yes, we can help you. We have a huge cadre to help you, but you also have a lot of responsibility. And I don't think you have to be perfect, but I do think you have to be very aware of who you are, what you do, and how you do it. So I think there are pros and cons to both sides, but I do believe there's a lot of pressure on both sides to be impactful. And I think the principles are pretty universal.
Do you find from your experience in your business, because you do this to teach people how to become good leaders, people from the military can sometimes, like I've experienced myself personally, going into organizations, Fortune 500 companies, and being disappointed at I won't say this organization, but flaws or problems in the leadership structure. They're like not having a clearer chain of command, not sticking to some of the things you talked about. A protocol sometimes that should be where everybody can say this is what we're supposed to do. In the military, you have a protocol. You have exactly what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, how it's supposed to be done, and what the standard is. Oftentimes in private business, that's not necessarily always apparent or clear or communicated well.
And I think one of the things, I would agree with you, one of the things that I've heard as one of the biggest complaints from my colleagues transitioning to the civilian world is a lack of clear knowledge about roles and responsibilities. So in the military, you have a rank, you have a position, you have a title, and you know that you exercise a military role, but you also exercise a clear responsibility for tasks. And both of those things matter. But in a company where you can be the vice president of operations, but everybody else is a vice president as well, it doesn't really mean that you are the second in charge or you have a clear responsibility for anything. And then also if they say, hey, you're the vice president of operations, but really all you do is kind of manage meetings, sometimes your responsibility is not commensurate with the title you hold. And so the military is very structured to that end. And on the civilian side, I think people get frustrated because there's just a lack of clarity. And so when it comes to leadership, one of the things that I think in the civilian world that we've talked about a couple times is the fact that for promotability, people often promote based on how well you do your job. And so you can have somebody who is a subject matter expert who is supervising you as a military leader who comes in and understands leadership. And so somebody is a good doer. They're the best person. They're more effective at selling cars, or they can build better houses, or they can, do X, Y, Z, but they don't understand the people element. And so they get paid more. They're they're responsible for people, but yet they don't know how to take care of people. And so my colleagues, I think, get frustrated because good doers are not in the right place. And those doers are frustrated because they say, hey, I'd rather be out, in the field, or I'd rather be out, on the street doing the job, as opposed to being in the office and managing paperwork and trying to manage people. They would prefer somebody else lead the team. And so I think those are some key frustrations that my colleagues that I have connected with as far as military members who have transitioned feel. And so I think if there was one takeaway from that for business owners or things like that, when you're considering transitioning veterans, ensure that lanes are clear, and that if you want a doer, then make sure that you have a doer in the right place. If you want a leader, make sure you put a leader in the right place, because doers supervising leaders will be very frustrated because the leader will say, hey, I think we should do things this way. And the doer will say, well, I'm in charge, but they don't have the skills to capitalize on somebody being able to help them. And then the leader will be frustrated because they want to be a team player. They want to come and bring ideas. But if no one's ready to hear their ideas, and solid ideas aren't being implemented and people aren't being taken care of, it can be quite frustrating.
Thank you for preaching the gospel today. This is Fortune 500 gospel going on right now. So three things you mentioned: be vulnerable, be gracious, but don't be the exception. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, when we talk about when leaders are actively connecting with people, there's some very important ways to make sure that you don't have a say-do gap. And one of them is that transparency is incredibly important. If you mess up, fess up. People need to know that you're real. They need to understand that you don't know everything, that if you made a mistake, you can say, I'm sorry, because you're modeling this behavior and you want somebody else to acknowledge their mistakes and take up for the fact that they may not have done something in a perfect manner. And again, they will model that. They will model what you mentor, not only what you say, but also what you do. And so transparency is incredibly important, but also being vulnerable. You have to be willing to say, not necessarily I messed up, but you know what, when I was younger or when I had this experience or the first time I tried this, I failed. And so ensuring that people understand that you have a sense of difficulty as well, or, you know what, I've gone through a divorce before and it was a heavy time for my family and I think you should take some time off, or it's okay to talk about it. I knew that I needed to talk to somebody and get professional help, or whatever it may be. If you need time off to talk to the chaplain, I knew that I wished I could just have an hour a week to set time aside and talk about how I was grieving over the loss of a family member, or whatever it may be. And so being vulnerable and allowing them to understand a little bit more about your experiences can only be helpful. Sometimes I think as leaders, we get so closed off because we feel like we have to be someone or we have to portray ourselves in a certain way. And people are more connected with you when they understand who you are. And it goes back to the basic premises of leadership that we've talked about. You know, it's been a while now, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. And you show you care by showing that you're not perfect, by showing that you have vulnerabilities. And so these are very clear ways to ensure that you can not have a say-do gap and say, hey, I really do care about you. And then you can convey that in your words and your actions. Another way that you can prevent a say-do gap is to be gracious. When you are thankful for the things that have happened, people know that you are thinking of them. You have to think to be thankful. And so you have to say, you know what, today Sean did a great show, and I should text him and say, thank you, Sean, for your inquisitiveness. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for the time that you've taken. But it takes time for me to think through that and then actively do the action that's required to say thank you. And so being gracious will help people to say, hey, you say you care about me, but do you? Oh, yeah, you do. You shot me a text and you appreciated that I stayed after a little bit extra today, or that I came in earlier, that I helped someone with a project. And some of the best leaders I've ever worked with are so gracious. They're humble, they're gracious, and those are character traits that are so valuable to me.
Wow. I think that's...
And the last thing I would...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was saying...
The last thing I would add in...
Yeah. No, go ahead. Take it away.
The last thing I would add when talking about say-do gaps is don't be the exception. Sometimes we find ourselves sitting in circumstances where, you know what, work starts at 8:30, but no one checks on me. I'm okay to come in at 8:35. And we get this mindset. And when I say I care about you, what can happen is I say I care about you, but yet I walk in late. And then when you walk in late, I have a write-up for you. I have something to say. You're called into my office. It's tracked on a tracker. And now this is the third late, arrival in 6 months. And so you have this situation where it says, hey, I care about you, but oh, by the way, I can conduct myself in any way I want. So again, it's a say-do gap, but you can mitigate that by saying, you know what, I'm not going to be the exception. And there's so many ways that we can think, you know what, no one's going to care. Or I can park in the handicap spot for 5 minutes because I'm just running in. But if somebody tries to, catch up with me while I'm the boss and, the security guards will give me a ticket, hey, listen, do the right thing. Just make the right choice. And when you make right choices, people around you observe, they follow, they ensure that your words match your actions, and those are simple ways to do them.
Wow. So you flew the A-10 Thunderbolt, aka the Warthog, the A-10 Warthog. Now,
I supported the A-10.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I did not fly the A-10. I apologize if I said that earlier.
No. I looked that up actually. I was just curious. Actually, I wanted to know as a pilot what plane you flew in the Air Force.
So I started off flying the T-37, and then I transitioned to the C-12.
Okay.
And the C-12 is a King Air 200.
Wow. Now, how do you feel about the Air Force decommissioning the A-10?
No, so this week, actually, the A-10 had its last flight in Fort Wayne, had the final A-10 flight before it got sent off to the boneyard. And I feel like it has a unique history, but it also has a very unique task. So overall, how do I feel about it? I struggle because we need close air support, and that's what that aircraft offers. So that aircraft is intended to support people on the ground. A lot of Army troops are supported by that. And so for those who are not military, when you have people who are marching onto a target and there's potential enemy contact, we will have some Air Force members who are embedded with the Army, and they are capable and competent to call in airstrikes. So an A-10 is a slow and low-flying jet that is capable of bringing heavy armament and carries a large gun in the front to be able to combat our enemies on the ground. And so this plane is incredibly useful for those things. And so we've invented some sixth-generation fighters. We're thinking the F-22 and the F-35, and those are capable of close air support on the ground. But this aircraft was specifically dedicated to that task. And so I think that we often don't have a lot of ground-to-ground combat. And I think we're fighting a different type of war now. And so sentimentally, as a military member, it's always sad to see, some type of aircraft that go to the boneyard, because then you become one of those people that's like, oh, yeah, I was there when the A-10 was there. And they're like, oh, okay, great. Thanks, Grandma. But by the same token, I believe people are going to be able to get their support. The military has made sure that people are going to get their support. But I just feel like having a dedicated aircraft for that specific purpose was an incredible use of resources. But if you can combine it, then now the military and the government can save money by combining close air support with long-range, fighters and that kind of thing.
That was the coolest plane I thought that was in the military was the A-10. I thought it was just really cool. I had a poster of that when I was a kid on my wall. Yeah, it was just a cool looking thing, like a flying tank. It's like a retro airplane, yes. but modern, like a modern retro looking, flying tank thing, whatever. It's pretty cool. So now going back to the leadership. Now, I had to get that in before we ran out of time. So I had to ask you about that. But when as a woman in the military particularly, and leading men, can you describe the dynamic in about 2 minutes? Because we're going to get off the air in a little bit. What it's like to be a woman in a leadership role when you're leading men, particularly.
This is such an interesting question because I was speaking this week for the speaker series at the Air Force Academy Prep School, and we were talking about leadership. And beforehand, I did a luncheon. And in the luncheon, one of the young ladies who's a cadet candidate asked the question, how do you lead men effectively, or how can you kind of prepare yourself for that role? And I said, the difference in leading anybody is your confidence. And I said, some people worry about if they're going to have a seat at the table. I said, I bring a placemat because I'm going to walk in and I know I'm going to have a seat and I'm going to choose where I sit and I'm going to have a placemat because this is my spot.
There you go.
And when you own that, nobody cares if you know what you're talking about. But if you admit that you don't know what you're talking about in certain areas, they're going to respect that as well. So be confident in what you know, be confident in what you don't know, but be ready and capable to find the answers. And I don't think anybody, man or woman, is going to be bothered by what you bring to the table. They'll be appreciative.
I appreciate your time as always. You're always doing some great stuff and always bringing some good information. And we can talk for hours and hours, but unfortunately this half hour went by too quick. So, Jennifer-Ruth Green, Lieutenant Colonel, appreciate you, ma'am.
Thank you, same, sir. Take care, Sean.
See you later.
Bravo, excellence, Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer-Ruth Green. She is proven battle leadership. the way she conveys excellence, you can't buy that. That's in her, and she knows it. And so, Jennifer, thank you so much for the accolades that you gave today on behalf of America's Heroes Group, because sometimes you just need to hear people say it. Because I look at days when Sean comes in here, he works 2 jobs. Ivan works 2 jobs, has a family. They're tired, but they come out of passion and love for America's Heroes Group. You can't buy that from people. Either people care or they don't. A paycheck is one thing, but when a person has a passion for something, always be willing to give credit where it's due, to give appreciation where it's due, and the ultimate respect where it's due. So your show today was timely, was so timely, and thank you so much. So today's show to me is dedicated to Sean Claiborne and Ivan Ortega, because America's Heroes Group is not America's Heroes Group if the unit is not whole. We weren't live streaming for like 5 weeks because Ivan hurt his back and he couldn't really walk and do what he would do. But so you guys were texting and emailing, and I appreciate that, because that means we are truly making a difference. So I'm just grateful today for the family of America's Heroes Group, because they come here every Saturday and give all of excellence for you to hear resources and information and referrals regarding what you need to know. Military population, veterans, active service members, family members, so you can be informed and make a powerful decision in regards to your life. So bravo to Sean Claiborne, the ultimate co-host, and Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Production. Please, if you need digital media presence, you can't find anyone better. We've been doing this show for 7 years. We've never had anybody like Ivan. You can call him at 773-671-4826. I can't get the last digit, I didn't. 6. Okay, let me say it again. 773-671-4826. You can Google Scouts Honor Production if you need media, digital, to take your business. It's business in the arena that we're in now to a whole different level, called digital space. Everyone, on behalf of Cliff Kelley and all of us, have a wonderful weekend. And to the best technical producer, production director of WVON, Titus Williams.
Bravo.
Blessed weekend, everyone.